All right, so let's begin here. President Cyril Ramaphosa has described the late Pope Francis as a person who advanced a worldview of inclusion, equality and care for marginalized individuals and groups. Ramaphosa is among many world leaders mourning the death of the Argentine pontiff. In a statement, the country's first citizen offered his condolences on behalf of the South African government to Catholics globally. Ramaphosa added that Pope Francis was a spiritual leader who sought to unite humanity and wished to see a world governed by fundamental human values. Let's now welcome Father Johnny Mphatse, South African Catholic priest, who's joining us live from Rome in Italy. Father Mphatse, thank you so much for your time. So we've been seeing, of course, visuals of tourists and pilgrims, gathering in and around St. Peter's Square in Vatican City since the announcement was made of the death of Pope Francis. Just give us your first-hand account then, just of the mood and the atmosphere in Rome, and especially the Vatican, following the news of the Pope's passing.
Greetings to you and greetings to everyone back home. The Vatican at the moment and Rome at large has a very low mood with the hearing of the passing of the Holy Father this morning, with the bells going around all the basilicas in Rome, all the churches around, and everyone gathering towards the Piazza San Pietro for they are paying homage to the late Holy Father. Of course, it's a time where most of Catholics are coming into Rome for their pilgrimages to pass through the Holy Door. We've just celebrated the Holy Week, where most would want to celebrate in the Vatican, in St. Pietro and other basilicas. So most Catholics are still around. That's why we see most of them in your live visuals at the Vatican coming to pay their homages and pray for the repose of the soul of the Holy Father.
And I would imagine for many of them, this is such a symbolic time for them, and of course for the death of Pope Francis. So we understand, of course, that the Pope's death prompts a number of things that will happen, including, of course, a period of mourning, after which we understand cardinals, especially those under the age of 80, will then convene to pick the next leader of the Catholic Church. Have you had the opportunity to speak with other clergy or Vatican officials? What are their thoughts on the legacy of Pope Francis?
Most of us who would have encountered the papacy of the Holy Father, I've been here for close to a year now, and the other brothers who live with me, whom I study with, we always speak of the great significance that the Holy Father has had, the influence he has had around the world, especially in issues of the poor, migrants and refugees. The Holy Father stating on numerous occasions that he cannot judge and would not judge when he's asked on questions of LGBTQI, how the Holy Father has been so much in touch with what is happening in Palestine, calling the parish priest there on a weekly basis. Even though he was in hospital, he really cared for the safeguarding of others and their safety. The Holy Father has been one person who has opened doors to those who are poor, those who are homeless in Rome. They find a place to camp around the Vatican. He has offered them a place for a shower, a warm meal. So he has been the people's Pope. He has been the humble man who tried to do away with all these luxuries that comes with the position and came down to the people to be one with them. So I do believe that his death now has really touched many, when we know very well he was one Pope who really cared for our people. In situations that we find ourselves, he was not quiet. Whenever there is war, whenever there is anything that's happening around the world, in Africa, he has always made comments during whenever he gives the speech during the Sunday Angelus. You would always hear him speaking of peace around the world peace in Africa, praying for those who are poor, praying for those who really need someone to be there for. So people knew that they had someone in Pope Francis.
And I mean, you describe him as many who we've spoken to have described him that, fundamentally he was a man who embodied and sought to promote social and economic justice. Having been in Rome yourself for a year, as I heard you say, are there any notable changes in the security or even maybe perhaps the operations of the Vatican that you've observed or seen in response to the Pope's passing?
At the moment, I think most of the things are happening internally, and in the recent coming days, then we will have the church instructing us as how his funeral would go about. Pope Francis's funeral would be quite different to the usual funerals that we have seen of the past popes, since he has made a few requests about where he will be buried. The procedure of his burial as would be different, as we have seen with the recent one just passed, Pope Benedict XVI. So far, it's still that stage where internally the cardinals have met, will meet with a few doctors later this evening. They will then put the Holy Father in his casket with whatever rituals that would then follow. And of course, Rome at the moment and Italy itself is in a period of mourning, so we will go through this for this upcoming 9 days in preparation for the burial of the Holy Father. And of course, in the coming few weeks, then that's where the security would tighten up, when we would have cardinals around the world coming to the Holy See for the election of the new Roman pontiff.
And I mean, as per your points and how you describe him, so it's no wonder that, some of his wishes are just so different. I mean, one of them is that he will be buried. He wished there will be one coffin rather than a traditional 3, and at this time made of wood and zinc. So he really did not only just speak about these things, but he also practiced them, which really speaks volumes for the man and the human he was.
Indeed, he was a humble man. He indeed was a humble man. I mean, if you look at his predecessors with everything that comes with the office, he did not take much of what is required of the Holy Father, the red shoes, the big cars that people would say the Holy Father drives on, the accommodation that the Holy Father is accommodated within the Vatican. He was a man down on earth. I mean, really, he also, with those instructions, if you see the burial ritual of the Holy Father with all the coffins that are piled together to make up one great coffin for the Holy Father, he just said, no, he wishes to be buried in a single zinc-like wooden coffin, no complications whatsoever. He don't wish for his body to be displayed. His coffin can be displayed there for the people.
Unfortunately, we've lost Father Mphatse's connection there. That was Father Johnny Mphatse, South African Catholic priest, joining us live from Rome in Italy, of course, just giving us his sentiments and condolences to the passing of Pope Francis. And of Ken, just reflecting on the man who was, I mean, just in terms of the funeral arrangements, the Pope's funeral will most likely be held in St. Peter's Square between 4 and 6 days after his death. Father Mphatse, I believe you are back. Just as you wrap up your and conclude in terms of your sentiments around Pope Francis, I mean, he was also a man that who was able to provide comfort, when people are in a period of mourning. So a number of people, now wondering what words of comfort, what messages of comfort would he be conveying during this time, particularly this Holy Week, as it were?
It's one beautiful thing is, as much as we are sad of the passing of the Holy Father, we are also happy that he has returned to his Father's house, whom he had served his entire life. I mean, being a migrant, being born of and moved to Latin America, is one person who offers consolation to us. He has believed in God, and yet, also in our belief in God, we do believe that God will heal our hearts. Especially during this time of Easter. I mean, we just passed Holy Week. We are on the Monday of the Easter tide, and we do acknowledge that everything that has happened, it's God's will, and God has given him comfort in his pain, that he will also grant comfort to each and every one of us during this time. The present Lord, of course, will be our light in this difficult time, but we trust in him, we trust in the Holy Spirit that everything will be well and everything will be in place as the church operates in the way that God has instructed us to follow.
Father Mphatse, thank you so much for your comments and, of course, your reflections. Father Johnny Mphatse, South African Catholic priest, joining us live there from Rome in Italy, in fact, giving us first-hand accounts of what he is experiencing at the time, and, of course, having, spoken to some mourners as well as pilgrims that have descended there in the Vatican. There you have those live visuals that we are seeing there. Of course, a lot of questions in terms of what are the next steps, what happens now. We've been discussing, of course, that there will be that mourning period that will follow the last 9 days or so, known as the mourning period Novendial, while Italy itself usually declares also a period of national mourning. The Pope's body will be blessed. It will be dressed in papal vestments and exhibited in St. Peter's Basilica for public viewing. Father Mphatse also confirming, of course, that Pope Francis had a number of wishes that he had also made known in terms of how he would like to be laid to rest. Of course, choosing there to have a funeral or a send-off with no pomp and pageantry. He will lie in an open coffin without all of that, commotion or pageantry and pomp, as he has said it. Daily prayers will be observed as well. The Pope's funeral will mostly, as we've been saying, likely be held at the St. Peter's Square between 4 and 6 days following his death, and will be led by the death of the College of Cardinals, currently 91-year-old Italian Giovanni Re. Traditionally, of course, the Pope is then buried at Vatican grottos, the crypts beneath the St. Peter's Basilica. But Pope Francis, as we are understanding, said that in 2023, in an interview, in fact, saying that he had picked the St. Maria Basilica in Rome, one of his favorites and most frequent churches, as his final resting place, making him the first Pope in a century to be interred outside the Vatican. Of course, many of people who know him understand this to be the man that they have known. As per he wished, there will be one coffin that we've spoken about, rather than the traditional 3 coffins normally bestowed. And this coffin will be made of wood and zinc.